welcome back to Beyond Real Estate with Jalen and our special guest, Peter Mejia of the Boys and Girls Club of Monrovia is here with us. Today, during Real Estate Roundup, we're going to be discussing just what drives the real estate market. It's something that we hear a million different opinions on from every source of news that we get. So we're going to open it up first to our awesome guest, Peter. Peter, in your opinion, what drives this real estate market?
Oh, wow. I want to say what's driving it is definitely popularity. I mean, I feel like it's just people feel like it's the right time. Um, Things are shifting. I don't have a clear understanding of it with other stuff going up, groceries and gas and whatnot, but it seems like a lot of people are jumping on the house market rally, and it seems to be doing good. So it's just people continue to see that progression, and it seems like there's it's also people that have been at their homes for a very long time, and it's time to sell. Kids have grown up or whatnot, and there's more availability, I guess. But it seems like the cost is also high, but people are still buying at this time. So I would say it's just primarily popularity, I guess. And you hear it everywhere. You're hearing it everywhere you look.
Yeah, I think that's a good, actually a pretty dang accurate summarization of what's going on and what's driving this market. Nick, anything to piggyback off of what Peter's summary was there?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree 100% in that popularity. You want social proof. We all want social proof that something is real,
Mhm.
and I think the fact that, like you said, it is for, lack of a better way to put it, it's a popular thing to do. People are talking about it. People are talking about how much money they're making out of it. People are talking about getting a second home, which drives not just the conversation, but action. With that said, I'll give my opinion of it. Very broadly, that change drives the real estate market. Peter alluded to, it's just time to sell because kids grew up, right? That's changing people's lives. Inevitably and unfortunately, you have divorces. That's changing people's lives. You have some that need to downsize. You talked about the kids moving out of the house. I don't need this 2,500 square foot home anymore. I need a 1,200 square foot home because it's just me and my wife or a husband or whatever the case is, right? So I think the fact that change happens, you have the ability to work from wherever you want based on remote work. Boom, there's change. Now I get flexibility. Now I get to choose where I live based on the fact that I can do my job off the internet, for whatever job those allow. So I think the fact that change is really the only constant on this planet is a big driver for what keeps it going.
Yeah, change is a huge aspect of that. And the big piece of change, ultimately, you can boil down to the supply and demand. If there are more buyers than there are sellers out there, then it's a seller's market and vice versa. So right after the collapse, and a lot of people lost their homes in 2008 and 2009, there was a lot of houses and not enough buyers for those houses. Therefore, house prices went down. We're seeing the exact opposite of that right now. And then also it comes back to the last few years, interest rates have been really good, which meant more people could afford more house. And so all those people that were thinking, hey, I do want to move up. I don't want to live in a condo anymore. That was a big one here in Denver. During all the craziness and everyone and everything is buying up houses left and right. Like the Denver condo market actually has a surplus right now because no one wants to live in a condo in downtown in the middle of a pandemic when you can't do anything that is available downtown. It makes sense on those very basic analytical terms. It makes sense on the emotional aspect, which I think the both of you covered very well. Hey, it's time to move on, whether that's kids are growing up and leaving the house. You have a new kid, and so it's time to get that other room. these are all things that definitely play a huge part in it. And that's being change. And then also the economic part. It's purely a supply and demand at the end of the day. Nick and I have covered it quite a bit in previous episodes of, hey, you just have to understand that this isn't a housing bubble in the same sense. This is just, there's more buyers than there are sellers for single family homes at the moment. So
Sure.
those are all the big things. And I don't know, Peter, Nick,
Yeah, Peter.
anything to add on to finish us up?
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the question of, were you guys surprised with the market and during the middle of a pandemic? Because we started to see the numbers go up, and that for me was a little thrown back. Like, aren't people scared of losing their jobs? But the what is it? The APRs they were really low at this point. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my first thought goes to, you have there again, change in preferences. Some people chose to move based on, I want my kid to go to school, right? And so people literally moved based on mass preference, based on what was open versus what was closed. I think that's an interesting one. What else did the pandemic do? It forced people to reevaluate how much space is enough space. When I am told I have to work from home in a pandemic scenario, I now feel like I need an office space that I didn't need it before. When my gym closed indefinitely, I now want that space, whether that's in my garage or another part of my house, to say, I'm moving because I can't deal with not going to the gym and not having my office space. What is that? It's change in preferences. So I think
thought it was real for a while. That dad bod came on quick during the pandemic for me. I was like, whew, I'm getting husky.
So I think those preferences were driven by new challenges that we didn't have to answer before. So I agree with you 100% in that. Surprising, yes, but it's interesting how things have just, again, changed. It's shifted things. It's shifted the conversation, where condos and luxury condos that had the gym, that had this, that had that, I think were and still are in many places very popular. But as Jalen just alluded to, in some bigger metro areas especially, it is starting to slow down based on, again, preferences changing to say, I don't want the small space. I'll pay a little bit more for the bigger space, which goes then to your next question of, well, how do people afford it? Like, aren't they scared of losing a job? Which I think is a fair assessment and a fair question. Nonetheless, Jalen, you're in the lending side.
Yeah.
And people have to afford these things. What is your take based on lending practices with, is this fake money underneath holding us up, or what are you seeing?
No, it's not fake money. The big thing that a lot of people, especially if they were self-employed, saw was lending strapped down. Like it ratcheted down. You had to prove that you made money more so than ever. And if that meant looking at 3 years worth of tax returns instead of 2, proving that your income, especially if you're self-employed, poor self-employed borrowers just can't catch a break. Self-employed running a business, they get hit by this pandemic. If you can't prove that your business wasn't affected to a great extent, or say it was, you're kind of SOL when it comes to being able to qualify for as much home as you think you can afford. There's a lot of things where it's, hey, I am comfortable paying this amount. Doesn't matter what you're comfortable with. It's what I can prove and what that comes to with ratios. Most of the time, it's half your income is the max monthly payment. Yeah.
I feel like, though, that because there has been so much activity, the self-employed individual hasn't necessarily been the driver of what's been surprising for many, as where's all this money coming from? So are you seeing, take the self-employed out of it, are you seeing other spaces to say, yeah, I mean, there are raises, there are pieces that I'm seeing now that, wow, people are making more in that job than I can ever remember seeing.
Oh, 100%. And one of the big things too that we're seeing during this whole thing was a lot of people wanting to be paid more, or they know that what they could be paid if they switch jobs or switch to a different company would increase, and they continue to do that. to the point of, yeah, there might be, say, 100 jobs currently for every 60 people out there. So that's looking for one. So you're actually seeing a lot of people not leave the workforce, or not come back to it, I should say, but instead they're going to a different company that's going to pay them more. And a lot of them are offering working remotely, or they can do the job remotely. And so that's where you're seeing more people actually be able to afford more house, especially in places like California, Colorado, Boise, Idaho, of all places, where you see these huge amounts of appreciation. You're like, how is that house worth $600,000? It needs to be completely renovated and they need to get the entire thing, but they're claiming that that's what they could get. And so that's where that's where you're seeing the biggest drive. But I think also as interest rates do increase, we're going to see home prices not fall, but they will start to level out, where those people that were getting those raises, they can only afford a couple 100,000 more than what they could previously. And house prices are already at that point. So now sellers have to be kind of cognizant and have the right team behind them to think, hey, we're not seeing houses go for $100,000 over asking price with a full cash offer. Just doesn't exist to the same degree that it did prior. And so be aware that we might not get what you could have gotten a year ago of a heavy bidding war, but it is still a seller's market. Like, don't get me wrong. It's still hard to get a single family home at this exact moment.
Right. Right.
But yeah,
Peter, let's bring Peter back into this. You heard us talk real estate there for a bit. Any questions or thoughts come to mind based on what we just talked about?
Yeah. So yeah, no, I really like the whole thought process of just how everything changes. With I didn't see that aspect of it, but yeah, just with the pandemic, it definitely changes things. Like Nick had mentioned about the gym and the office space, and the family growing. Those are all, for the exception of the gym, factors that I thought about, but it gives a great perspective and spin on things to see it differently. So, good points. I like that.
No, I appreciate it. And I think that's the reality on the flip side, right? Let's play the worst case scenario card. For those that say, oh, we're in a bubble and things are going to crash. It's like, not that it's good for Jalen and I, but we're going to have a job still. Why? Because people need help. They now need to get out of that house and put me in a condo, put me in a smaller home. And that requires change still, and I think that's an interesting one, because talking to other individuals, that a lot of their first thought is, well, the economy drives the real estate market. If the economy goes, the housing market goes. And I would say, well, hold on, because again, pandemic, case in point, we weren't booming economically, right? Things were shut down. Restaurants were shut down. Mom and pop shops were shut down economically. But yet we all saw this housing market just blow up in for homeowners in a good way. And there's like, bring on this appreciation. Didn't see that coming, right? But there again, the fact is it's change. And as Jalen alluded to, supply and demand. I guess I'll leave with this point, it being that, for as crazy as some of us might say, what? Sold for how much? Remember, sellers just put the price out there. You need a buyer to ultimately say yes or no to it, right? And goes back to Jalen's perspective and take on, you need the money to back it up. You can't just say, hey, Jay, I'm good for $1 million. Can you please make sure I get that house? Like, it's like, no, prove it. And that's the reality with these prices. In some cases, they almost seem exaggerated. In our reality, it's lending practices that are very good. They're very stringent. And the buyer sets the price by saying, I'll take it. And you know what? I'm not just going to take it. I'll take it for X amount over list price or at list price or whatever. So I think that's the piece that we sometimes forget.
Yeah.
Sellers, we might say, why are they putting their house up for that? It's never going to sell for that. Well, if there's a buyer for it, it will sell for that. And right now we're seeing virtually so many numbers that we never thought fathomable. It's like, huh.
Oh yeah, and then anyone that didn't hop on it prior, they're like, we've all done it. We're like, okay, so I was gonna buy a house. I was gonna buy that house 5 years ago. Now I'm looking at it. Holy crap! I could have
Yeah.
sent my kids to college with all that appreciation. Like,
Yep.
okay, just don't look at it. It's
Yeah.
doesn't do anything good for the psyche. Perfect. I think we're gonna wrap it up right there. We will be back after a brief message and come right back to business bookend before we put Peter on the hot seat.